Mko tayari?
Yeah.
Haya, asante. Tuanze na maombi. Kwa jina la Yesu Kristo tunaomba na kuamini. Amina. So, ladies and gentlemen, we called you to respond to a few of the issues that have been raised this afternoon by Mr. Odinga and one Mother Karua, addressing the press from wherever they were addressing them from. And having listened to what they have said, we want to respond and say that, one, the claim that theirs are peaceful demonstrations is indeed ridiculous. Because what we have seen so far, the demonstrations have nothing close to being peaceful picketing or demonstrations. And we were posing the question, how can the demos be peaceful? Yet they are burning police cars, raping innocent mamambogas, looting shops and robbing motorists, as happened yesterday and last Monday in Kawangware, Mathare, Embakasi, and in our CBD respectively. But curiously, none of these incidents, including the burning of a police car yesterday, or the raping of not less than 3 mamambogas in Mathare, none of these incidents, curiously, were reported in mainstream media. And I say curiously, none of those incidents of rape, beastly acts of rape, of innocent mamambogas in Mathare were reported last Monday by the mainstream media. Curiously again, yesterday, a police car was torched in broad daylight in the view of media cameras. Again, curiously, the mainstream media chose not to report that as part of their news. We want to state that this is a deliberate campaign of misinformation and a well-choreographed script to tarnish the government's image and name, and specifically targeting a few of us. And I want to remind you, the allegations by Mr. Odinga only last week on Wednesday or Thursday, when he alleged that the Honorable Deputy President, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, the Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, the member for Kiharu, and myself had hatched a scheme of unleashing violence to protesters yesterday. That was only last week. You are all witnesses, since you are out there, what happened, whether such schemes were there. We know this is a deliberate and well-choreographed script by Mr. Odinga and his team to profile, especially those of us from the Mount Kenya region, where their sponsor and project owner of Project Azimio comes from. Mr. Odinga knows Rigathi Gachagua for many years. He knows he's an honest man. He knows he's a truthful man, and as he says, and a peaceful one for that matter. Mr. Odinga has also had the opportunity to know myself. For the last 10 years, I've been a member of parliament. He knows the Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, at least for the last 5 years, he has been a member of parliament. And he knows we are equally peaceful men. When we were shoved out of a government that we fought for in 2017 by the handshake regime, we had all the options that Mr. Odinga and his brigade of goons and hooligans are employing today, including violent protests like they are doing. But we chose, under the leadership of William Ruto, to pursue an honest conversation with the people of Kenya. And we had that conversation that culminated in our success in the elections of 2022. Therefore, Mr. Odinga does know that right from President William Ruto, the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, the Leader of Majority in the National Assembly, Kimani Ichungwa'S, the Chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, Ndindi Nyoro, are peaceful, honest men who are also believers in the rule of law and believers in constitutionalism. Mr. Odinga also knows he is the one who has a track record as a political operative whose history of anarchy and bloodshed is littered across the many years he has been in operations as a politician. Violence, and indeed political violence, is synonymous with Odinga, not our president, neither any of us in the Kenya Kwanza coalition. And if violence, as Kenyans know, is synonymous with the name Odinga, anarchy is his middle name, and bloodshed is his only currency to political power. We've also had Mr. Odinga and Eunice Wamalwa allege that the international community is on a studious silence over the ongoings in our country. We want to remind Mr. Odinga and Eunice Wamalwa that they asked only a few weeks ago, they called on the international community to keep off Kenya's internal affairs. And we posed the question to Mr. Odinga and his hooligans and goons. Why are you not asking the international community to keep off our internal affairs for you to orchestrate a campaign of anarchy and disinformation? Then you turn around to employ the script you employed in 2007 to create anarchy and bloodshed, then appeal to the international community as you did in 2007 to negotiate you into political power. We want to ask the international community to keep watch of the ongoings, and particularly the International Criminal Court, to keep track of the script being employed by Mr. Odinga and his sponsors, and the campaign of violence that they have unleashed on Kenyans, and the well-choreographed campaign of disinformation, which is characteristic, we must say, of Mr. Odinga and his team. We've also had Mr. Odinga allege that the attacks yesterday of the Northlands farm in Ruiru, or on the outskirts of Nairobi, and Spectre East Africa Limited were orchestrated by goons which shamelessly, some of the media houses, I have to say, and I repeat, shamelessly, some of the media houses last night were reporting as government-sponsored goons. And we therefore pose the question, if they are government-sponsored goons, who is a sponsor of the hooligans, the rapists, and the murderers that have ravaged our country in the last 3 weeks? We pose the question to Mr. Odinga and his team. Before this administration embarked on a tax collection program under the Kenya Revenue Authority, before this administration embarked on investigations on extrajudicial killings under the handshake regime, before this administration embarked on an aggressive investigation into the massive looting of our economy through the subsidies program, of fuel, of food items, and the infamous telecom sale, this country was very peaceful. It is not until this government and this administration embarked on tax collection measures from people who believed they were above the law and were exempted, or rather exempted themselves from taxation. It is not until investigations of the murderous scheme to enforce disappearances and kill hundreds of Kenyans began with the investigations of SSU and those who commissioned those killings, it is not until investigations began on the looting spree, especially in the last 3 years, the last 3 months of the last regime, that violence suddenly broke out under the pretext that there was a whistleblower who to this day is only known to Mr. Odinga and his sponsor. On Northlands, I've listened to the script Mr. Odinga was reading from his sponsor, and we want to pose the following questions to Mr. Odinga. We saw yesterday when the safety and security manager at Spectre East Africa Limited was interviewed by members of the media. He asserted that indeed the National Police Service responded in record time. And in fact, that manager thanked the police for having intervened when the factory was attacked by a group of unknown people. If the police could respond to the attack at Spectre East Africa Limited, we pose the question to Mr. Odinga and his sponsor, how comes we have not seen either the safety manager or the security manager or the hundreds and tens of policemen that guard Northlands estate? And we want to remind all Kenyans that Northlands is not home to anybody else. It is home to 2 former sitting presidents of the Republic of Kenya. The late Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, who is survived by a widow who is still alive, who is entitled to state security and is offered state security, to the immediate former president Uhuru Kenyatta, who is entitled and still enjoys massive state security. Indeed, if you did your investigative journalism, I suspect if there is no small barrack at Northlands, there could be a police post or a police station in Northlands. Kenyans need to ask themselves the curious question, how comes even the policemen, elite policemen who guard Northlands, were nowhere to be seen? We have not had any reports, not from the OCS of the stations around Northlands, not from the OCPD, not from the Inspector General of Police. That was a distress call to the police for backup. What coincidence is it that these attacks happened at a time the organizers knew the police had been kept busy by looters and unpeaceful demonstrators in town? And I think if Kenyans ask themselves those questions, you will then get to see how this script is being rolled out. Nice, that is why we have asserted it is a well-choreographed script by none other than the masters and the lords of violence and anarchy in this country and their sponsors. And therefore, we want to call their bluff and tell them they do know President William Ruto is a believer in democracy and in the rule of law and constitutionalism. Those who are believers in anarchy and bloodshed as the only currents to achieving political power are known. And therefore, they must desist from either the attempts to tarnish the name of the president, the deputy president, or any of us as leaders in the Kenya Kwanza coalition. And if they have issues, we have said it before, as members of parliament, our doors are open. Parliament is open. Even now, when the National Assembly is on recess, the Senate is in session. Issues that are of concern to the Kenyan people, like the cost of living, have got an avenue where we can discuss these issues. Otherwise, I think it is quite clear that the script is being rolled out, cause anarchy, cause bloodshed, make the country ungovernable, call on the religious community and the international community to force government into negotiations, negotiate yourself into power. We know that script, Mr. Odinga, and we want to assure you it shall not happen. You have only one choice, to choose to abide by the laws, of our country and do whatever you want to do within the provisions of our constitution without interfering with the rights of other Kenyans to assemble. And in conclusion, let me draw parallels, because I've heard them try to belabor that theirs are peaceful demonstrations and picketing. Less than a month ago, the business community from Nyamakema and downtown staged almost a 10,000 men walk from River Road, Nyamakema, to the office of the president on Harambee Avenue. And they delivered a petition there, peacefully. They did the same to the office of the deputy president across the road. They walked to the gate of Senate, Parliament, and delivered a petition, peacefully. Escorted by police. Nobody looted anybody's business. Why is it that Mr. Odinga's protests and processions have to come with burning of police cars, beastly acts like raping of innocent mama mbogas, as happened in Mathare, the unfortunate incidents you saw yesterday in Kibra, pitting religious groups against each other, pitting ethnic communities against each other. And I want to be very clear, this script is only synonymous with the workings and operations of none other than Raila Amolo Odinga. He's the only person who has pitted communities against each other. He is the only person in the history of this country who has used anarchy and bloodshed as the only currency to achieve political power. Kwa hayo mengi, nikomeshe hapo.
President and terrorists and the people that are raining terror on innocent citizens of this republic. And it begs a question, converse about what? What are they to talk about? I ask that question because, on one hand, if you listen to Azimio leaders, one, they say they don't recognize that there is a government, that there is a president duly elected by the people of Kenya. So if you don't recognize him, who do you want to talk to? Second, and most important, the fundamental question that we need to ask ourselves as Kenyans is, up to when? For how long shall Raila Odinga continue to read from the same script over and over again? Go to an election, lose, cause chaos, go to the table, and find your way to power. Did that in 2007, did it again in 2017, and now you want us to entertain that again in 2022? Then what example are we setting for young children? What example are we setting as a country? That there is an alternate route to achieving whatever dreams you have. That if you run into challenges with the law, that you just create chaos, cause anarchy everywhere, and you will be rewarded? Indeed, that is a message that we want to give to those that are telling us that please engage these terrorists for the sake of peace. I strongly believe this is a country strongly governed by the rule of law. The challenge that we want to pose today is to the Inspector General of Police. The leaders that are calling on people to attack others, of course, Azimio use coded languages in communicating. When they tell their supporters, go out and peacefully demonstrate, their supporters understand what they are saying. That's why they don't do it peacefully. They run havoc on innocent civilians, public property. So please, dear Kenyans, let us join all of us in one voice and ask the Inspector General of Police to take action against those that are leading these demonstrations and those that are leading protesters in destroying other people's properties. Supermarkets are being looted, people's vehicles are being vandalized, like you saw yesterday. Yet there are leaders who are leading these teams. I'm sure there are cameras that are capturing these people as they go about these incidences. We want to see those people arrested and brought to book so that Kenyans can know that we are a country governed by the rule of law. That is a challenge that we have, a challenge of the rule of law. Lastly, is just to ask, what is it that Azimio are demonstrating about? When they began, they told us that there was a server somewhere that they wanted to be open, in the absence of which they will raid State House and evict the duly elected president. So the question is, should the police have just sat back and watched them commit these crimes that they have professed out of their mouth, that they want to raid State House and attack people, kick out the president? Because that's what they have said in their rallies. If it's about cost of living, we know very well that, first of all, we had elections barely 6 months ago. They left a battered economy. They know how much they looted. Therefore, let them give the new administration time to put things in order. In any case, who doesn't know what it takes to repair a ravaged economy? Tuambiane tu ukweli. Kwani uchumi ni suruali ati ikitoboka inashonwa na siku mbili? Ndio Raila atuambia ati bei ya unga inafaa kuwa imeshuka, hii inafaa kuwa imefanyika ama ile ingine. Jamani, tuache mchezo. Tuwe watu ambao tunazingatia sheria. Tujue kama ni kweli Azimio wanasema wanataka kufanya maandamano na ni maandamano ya amani. Kwa nini basi hawaambii polisi? Wewe unaona mabarua ile wanaandika, wanasema watashika polisi wale wajavaa uniform na mambo kama hayo. Is that really a request for a peaceful demonstration? Why can't they write to the Inspector General of Police and say, we want to picket from time XYZ to time this, we will be taking this particular route? You want to be allowed the whole country. What about the rest of us who are not part of your mandamano? Where will we go about our business peacefully? Yet we know that you don't know how to peacefully coexist with others. Therefore, we urge Kenyans to shun these leaders that are causing division. We want to ask you, members of the press as well, not to...
In 2007, Kenyans suffered. And at that time, we all said, never again. But it is unfortunate, the known figure, who is none other than Raila Amolo Odinga, is again on it, trying to mobilize Kenyans, trying to influence people so that they can turn against each other. If he's used to gaining power through bloodshed, I think it is high time for Kenyans to tell him, we are not for that. It's unfortunate, yesterday I witnessed on Ngong Road, the young people who are involved on that. And they were throwing stones. Innocent Kenyans were driving peacefully, and they were trying to run after everybody. I looked at them and I wondered whether they were even Kenyans. In fact, some of them looked as if they are so strange, they are strangers in this city. And I wonder where they brought those young people from. And it is high time for now for us as leaders to tell Raila Odinga that you have shed enough blood. You have destroyed people's property. You have destroyed our economy. The idea of telling people that the demonstrations are based on high cost of living is not true. Our government is just 6 months old. Where were you 1 year ago when the situation was even worse than this? That time, you were praising the government and you are happy enjoying what you are getting from the government. And today, it is like you have just woken up and realized that Kenyans are suffering. Enough is enough, and we are here to tell you that we as Kenya Kwanza government, we are not ready to condone and to entertain the nonsense that you keep bringing to the country. This country is governed by rule of law, and our president is peace-loving president. We as the leaders and as religious conflict, which we have never suffered from, and also ethnic clashes that we know some of us have suffered from. And as I finish, anytime violence happens, the group that is mostly affected are women and children. As you have heard, some women have been raped and other people have lost their properties. Our school-going children yesterday suffered, and the images they saw last evening on the screens were really scary. And it is now, that is why we are saying we are not ready to entertain this. Use other means to look for power, but never look for bloodshed and conflict. That will only destroy our country and our image. And we call upon international people so that they watch on what is happening. The other day, our president, our current president and the former president were taken to ICC. It is high time now for people to watch on what is happening and also make sure that the organizers, the sponsors of this particular demonstration that keeps coming will be brought to books and will suffer for what they are doing. Every action must be followed by of course, there are some results. That is not good. And so we call upon the international organizations, and for those people who are trying to show the other people that the government is not doing the right thing, watch our steps and see how much we are committed to serving the nation. Thank you.
Yes. Swali moja. Which one?
Particularly katika shamba la Tutavamia. Maana nimesikia iko katika kama kwamba report wanasema kwamba hayo mashamba yenu tutayavamia.
Nilisema kweli? Ati? Ni
watu wa gani ungetumia kuvamia hayo mashamba ama wewe mwenyewe?
Sasa wacha nikuambie, ndio nimekuambia kwanza kusafisha jina, sina jina chafu. Walio na majina machafu wanajulikana Kenya hii. Wale wanao majina ambao majina yao ya katikati ni fujo, vurugu na umwagikaji wa damu wanajulikana, na ndio nimesema jina la katikati Raila, Anarchy, Violence, Odinga. Huyo ndiye synonymous na violence, sio Kimani Ichung'wa, sio Rigathi Gachagua, sio Ndindi Nyoro, sio William Ruto. La pili, nilimshauri aliyekuwa rais wa Jamhuri ya Kenya Uhuru Kenyatta Saturday wacha hii Saturday last Saturday but one, and I cautioned, because I am a ground operative, I listen to what is on the ground. We cautioned Uhuru Kenyatta that our brother, you are losing hold of your people in the Mount Kenya region because you are not listening to them. When he was president, he refused to heed our advice. I cautioned him last Saturday but one. I told him the same, my message, and I addressed, if you listen to that clip, I was very particular. I addressed none other than Uhuru Kenyatta. And I said he's a sole and singular financier of this Azimio chaos, as the chairman of the Azimio Council. And I told him, if you continue to orchestrate violence, violence has no end, it has no boundaries. You find it at your doorstep. Kenyans have questions about your leadership, about your family's wealth, from land to the Pandora Papers, to the looting that happened in the last 3 months of your regime as president. And I've told you, part of the script is to ensure that this government ceases investigations on matters extrajudicial killings, crimes against humanity. 2 weeks ago when we had a presser here, I did remind our former president, remember my brother, you were just released by ICC on crimes against humanity the other day. Therefore, I know these things have caused jittery with them. They have gotten to a level of desperation that they have gotten to, and it is that desperation that you saw in the choreographed attacks at Northlands yesterday, at Spectre International, East Africa, whatever it's called, yesterday. Therefore, I will say this in conclusion. There is no excuse at all for anybody in this country to use violence as a means of settling scores. None whatsoever. There is no reason at all for anybody in this country to think they are above the law, that they can use anarchy to negotiate themselves into power. Uliza nikujibu nikiweza.
Wako tunaona kwamba uvamizi ulitendeka.
Ushauri? Kama walipanga kujivamia, hayo ni masuala ya polisi kuchunguza. Kama Kimani Ichungwa alihusika, mimi wanajua kwangu nyumbani hapa Kikuyu, wanajua ofisi yangu hapa, wanajua ofisi yangu Kikuyu. Mimi niko tayari to account for every minute of my time. I told you, remember, Raila Odinga last week alleged that myself, Ndindi Nyoro and Rigathi Gachagua were in Rigathi Gachagua's sijui which day last week, Tuesday of last week, planning violence. And I told the former Prime Minister, come on, Mr. Violence, talk to Alma Wairimo, my 3-year-old daughter, who I was with from the time I left the chamber to the time we slept together with her, because we slept at the same time. I might have sneaked out when my wife slept, but my daughter is my only alibi. And I told Odinga, please go speak to that 3-year-old. And you know children cannot lie. She will tell you, Alma will tell you. I was with Daddy until we both slept, fell asleep on the couch, and we went to bed together. Then from there on, my wife can tell you I never left that bed.
Imetosha Baba Alma.